We have the idea of a bridge across the chasm. Now, that is an old mystic idea that there was a chasm. There was a chasm between this existence, where we are now, and a higher plateau of existence, and that many people trying to make it fell into the abyss.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. And the people in the houses all went to the university where they were put in boxes, and they came out all the same. And there's doctors and lawyers and business executives, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. And they all play on the golf course and drink their martinis dry, and they all have pretty children, and the children go to school, and the children go to summer camp, and then to the university where they are put in boxes, and they come out all the same.
If you leave this room after seeing this film and walk out and never mention Scientology again, you are perfectly free to do so. It would be stupid, but you can do it. You can also dive off a bridge or blow your brains out. That is your choice. But if you don't walk out that way, if you continue with Scientology, we will be very happy with you, and you will be very happy with you.
I guess that would all depend on how you define happiness. If happiness means losing your family, your mind, your best friends, your life, your goals, and your soul, and yeah, I can attest that Scientology did make me happy. Okay, my friends, welcome back. We're covering Scientology's Bridge to Total Freedom today, so class is in session. Put your TRs in. Going up Scientology's bridge can be likened to going to school. But rather than having the state's version of everything downloaded into your mind, you have L. Ron Hubbard's version of everything implanted into your mind. The Scientology Bridge to Total Freedom is also called the Classification, Gradation, and Awareness Chart. And there's two different sides. There's a processing side, which is their version of psychotherapy, which is actually hypnosis repackaged, and the training side, where you learn how to process someone. So one ascends a series of grades on the processing side, eventually culminating in the first major milestone of Scientology, the state of clear. After the state of clear is achieved, one learns how to solo audit and then goes through a series of interrogation or eligibility steps in order to be invited onto the OT levels, culminating in the second and final major milestone of Scientology, operating Thetan Level 8. Now, on the training side of the bridge, we have the first major course, the student hat. Here, one puts on his hat as a student and supposedly learns all about how to actually study. From here, one ascends a series of classes designed to make one into a classed auditor, the person who's qualified to deliver the auditing. And this is done by studying the academy levels. We talked in previous videos about how one first becomes snookered into Scientology, and after that happens, they'll usually take an introductory service, something along the lines of the success through communication route. So the whole idea is to ascend a series of grades, get onto and through the spiritual or operating Thetan levels, and regain your full innate power as a spiritual being. Now, each level has a specific ability gained that a Scientologist is promised on the grade chart. The very top being Truth Revealed, where you're told that you will handle the primary reason for amnesia on the whole track. The whole track being all your past lives. In other words, you'll remember who you are and you will be at cause over life. L. Ron Hubbard had this to say about the education system, which is also how he indoctrinated Scientologists. One error, however, must be remarked upon. The examination system employed isn't much different from a certain hypnotic technique. One induces a state of confusion in the subject by raising his anxieties of what may happen if he does not pass. One then teaches at a mind which is anxious and confused. That mind does not then rationalize, it merely records and makes a pattern. If the pattern is sufficiently strong to be regurgitated verbatim on an examination paper, the student is then given a good grade and passed.
You know?
Now you know why you didn't retain and or use 90% of what you learned in the quote-unquote education system. So, that's what the bridge to total freedom looks like, my friends. That's a very cursory overview, and that's the roadmap, as you know, those that are following along. That's the roadmap that we're using to deconstruct Scientology. Now, what we're going to be covering in this video, because I've wanted to do this since the end of season 1, to show you this fucking bridge finally, because this is the roadmap that we're using to dissect this incredibly complex, amazing trap that this fucking nut job L. Ron Hubbard created. Now, nobody wakes up one day and says, I would like to join a cult and completely destroy my life, my family, and my mind over a 30-year period. What happens is you get lied to and you get slow rolled into it. So as always, and as is customary in this series, I'm going to be your tour guide through this madhouse called Scientology. And I always assume that the viewer doesn't know anything about it because I want to give you the experience of what I actually lived and what it's like. Now, in this video, you're going to learn what Scientology doesn't tell their unsuspecting victims when they innocently go down and take the personality test or sign up for a $100 course in the introductory services. This is what they don't tell you. And Scientology is not only extremely financially expensive. I mentioned in the last video that it's a rich man's cult on one level. It will cost you everything. It's a totally immersive experience that happens slowly where you don't even realize the takeover bid that happens on your soul. So I'm going to ask you, the viewer, to join me on this journey, and you get a sneak peek on what they won't tell you that it's going to actually cost you. So in the very beginning of this video, you saw the training and the processing side. And I want to show you what that cost financially, as well as what you're looking at time-wise. So the auditing or processing side of the bridge is sold in what's called an intensive. An intensive is a block of 12.5 hours of auditing, and it's best done 2.5 to 5 fucking hours every day. We talked about the purification rundown in previous videos, and I've done it myself 3 times, and that, added with the survival rundown, will cost you $5,000. Now, the HGC auditing for 12.5 hours will cost you $2,500, and it's sold on a sliding scale, so the more you buy at one time, the less expensive it is. If you would like 12 intensives or 150 hours, that'll cost you $22,500. Now, at some point along your journey up the bridge, you're probably going to arrive at the mecca of Scientology called Flag Land Base. 12.5 hours of auditing, if your case level is below OT3, will cost you $6,800. If your case level is above OT3, you can expect to pay $7,800 per 12.5 hours of auditing. And if you want 150 hours, it'll cost you $64,350 fucking dollars. Now, there's many different rundowns that you can only do at Flag, the most famous and powerful ones being the L rundowns. Now, check this shit out. For 12.5 hours of auditing, you're going to pay $12,000. And for 150 hours on the L rundowns, it's $1,000 shy of $100,000. Now, the training side of the bridge puts a person in command of life. It's said that 50% of the gains come from the training side. Auditors are the most valuable beings on the planet. When a Scientologist trains in the academy, he becomes a classed auditor and joins the elite of planet Earth. Now you know where the narcissism of Scientologists comes from. So the first part of the training bridge, called the Auditor Fundamentals Package, is $10,000. The academy levels from 0 to 4, where you actually train how to be an auditor, will also cost you $10,000. And for the Class 5 auditor package, you're looking at $22,500. Now, in order to train as an auditor, you're of course going to need to purchase an e-meter as well at $5,000. But wait, you actually need to purchase two, because what if one of them breaks down during a session? Did I mention the massively expensive accommodation rates that you'll be expected to pay? Should you want a penthouse suite at the Oak Cove while getting flag auditing, you can expect to pay $800 a night. Of course, you'll also be expected to pay your yearly membership fee into the International Association of Scientologists, which allows David Miscavige to defend Scientology in the way of high-priced lawyers buying off the police and other nefarious activities. Allegedly, of course. A final cost to mention here of being a Scientologist is that you will be expected to spend a shitload of money purchasing endless books and lecture series from L. Ron Hubbard. So that's just a very small sample of what it costs to actually do Scientology that they don't let on up front. They just sell you a course for $50, and they don't tell you you're going to have to mortgage your house, 5 years hence in order to get up to their bridge to total freedom. We're going to cover more of that cost as we carry through this series, but picking up from where we left off along the theme of nobody joins a cult, Scientology ensnares people and is almost impossible to prosecute or hold accountable for its crimes, because from the very moment that you walk into Scientology, you're being set up to be legally ensnared by signing these contracts. Now, there's 4 specific contracts I'm going to show you real quick that every Scientologist has to sign, every would-be Scientologist, and they're set up in a way to make you confess, no pun intended, that Scientology is a religion, to strip you of your right to your PC or pre-clear folders, to make it impossible to sue them, and to kidnap you. I shit you not. That's actually how they murdered Lisa McPherson with this particular contract and rundown that was called the Introspection Rundown. So here's what this first bullshit legal document looks like, and it's called Attestation of Religious Belief Regarding the Scientology Film Orientation. Having seen Orientation, and in the exercise of my own free will and my own independent thought and judgment, I recognize, acknowledge, and agree that Scientology is a religion. The church is a church of the Scientology religion. Now, after having seen the orientation film, at the bottom of this legalese gobbledygook, you are to date and sign your life away, having no fucking idea what you just signed. Now, in the second legal monstrosity that an unwitting Scientologist is required to sign, one gives up the legal right to sue the Church of Scientology or to ever have a lawyer represent them in any dispute with Scientology. This contract memorializes my freely given consent to be bound exclusively by the discipline, faith, internal organization, and ecclesiastical rule, custom, and law of the Scientology religion in all matters relating to Scientology religious services. This means that I am forever abandoning, surrendering, waiving, and relinquishing my right to sue or otherwise seek legal recourse with respect to any dispute, claim, or controversy against the Church. Contract number 3 here strips you completely of your right to your PC folders. In connection with my participation in religious services, the Church and all other Scientology churches and organizations in which I participate in such religious services may compile a folder or folders containing its notations of my spiritual progress, known as a pre-clear folder or PC folder, as well as other ecclesiastical files containing notations regarding my spiritual progress. I specifically acknowledge and agree that all of my PC folders and other ecclesiastical files containing notations regarding my spiritual progress, as well as the contents thereof, are the sole and exclusive property of Church of Scientology International. They are not mine, and I have no legal, ecclesiastical, or other rights whatsoever with respect to them. This final contract allows Scientology to legally imprison a parishioner. The Scientology religion teaches that the spirit can be saved. and that the spirit alone may save or heal the body, and the introspection rundown is intended to save the spirit. I understand that the introspection rundown is an intensive, rigorous religious service that includes being isolated from all sources of potential spiritual upset, including, but not limited to, family members, friends, or others with whom I might normally interact. As part of the introspection rundown, I specifically consent to church members being with me 24 hours a day at the discretion of my case supervisor, in accordance with the tenets and customs of the Scientology religion. The case supervisor will determine the time period in which I will remain isolated according to the beliefs and practices of the Scientology religion. I further specifically acknowledge that the duration of any such isolation is uncertain, determined only by my spiritual condition, but that such duration will be completely at the discretion of the case supervisor. Now, we mentioned in the episode Scientology Bites how I woke up in a single day, and we'll cover that when we get to the end of this season in more detail. But what happened to me is I realized in a single day, and this is what gave me a heart attack that lasted for several years. That's not even the right word. It was incredible. It was the most profound experience I've ever had in my life. I realized in a single day that I was going to be subjected to all these contracts that I had signed, including, as we also mentioned in Scientology Bites, I was reading off this list of how a cult works, and I was understanding that those pre-clear folders where you're promised you have priest-penitent confidentiality and they'll never be used against you was now going to be fucking used against me. So I never thought I was going to leave Scientology. I never thought I was going to be a suppressive person or what they call a sociopath. That was other people. I was never going to leave Scientology, so it didn't occur to me while I was learning all this stuff, signing my life away on these contracts and going up this bridge, that I was going to be seen as a suppressive by doubting Scientology and subjected to all this shit I was learning about. So, in the very first episode called The Bridge to Total Amnesia Part 1, I introduced you to the hypnosis aspect of Scientology. Now, this is by far the most insidious, evil part and where the power of Scientology comes from that you're not only not told about at the beginning, you're going to have a hell of a time figuring out if you're lucky enough to wake up out of this fucking thing, 10, 20, 30 years hence, what the fuck actually happened to you. Now, I'm definitely going to be developing this theme more as we move up the bridge and I take you up these levels bit by bit. But let me just give you an example here of what's happening at the very beginning. So they have you write a success story at the very end of any course that you take or any auditing session that you do. I myself have written hundreds of these fucking things. And the reason they do this is a couple of reasons. One, it acts as a post-hypnotic suggestion. So as we discussed in previous videos, you're always taken up to what they call a major stable win, either in the processing side or when you finish a course. Now, while you're in that ecstatic state of mind, they have you write a success story about what wins or gains you got out of it. What that does is it reinforces the idea that you did get something out of it while you're in this trance state that's eventually going to wear off. So you need to go back to do more courses and more auditing. And it also is used against you when you leave. Just like you're unwittingly signing these contracts, you have no idea how much money Scientology is going to cost you. You're not told any of this up front. You're also not being told you're being hypnotized. So when you come out and you start understanding what happened to you and you want to speak out about Scientology, they, like my parents did, said, we have all these success stories that you wrote. You have hundreds of wins and gains that you got out of Scientology. This is what my fucking parents said to me when I was trying to wake them up out of this. And I'm going to tell you a little story at the end of this about that. So this is like a case that they're building on you the entire time, so that whenever you do figure out this con, you're going to be told you must be full of shit because we have years and a stack load of success stories stating otherwise. So let me just give you a little bit of an example, another example of a post-hypnotic suggestion that is where the power of this fucking thing comes from. If you don't understand how your subconscious mind works, but a psychopath and a hypnotist like L. Ron Hubbard does, you can make somebody believe anything, including the Xenu story, literally anything. So these people aren't idiots. They're victims of unconsented hypnosis being used on them. Now, just like L. Ron Hubbard structured his brainwash, not dissimilar to the education system, Scientology's auditing or processing side can be likened to watching television, particularly the news. So what happens is, in an auditing session, they make sure that you're very comfortable, that you're sitting in a comfortable chair and that you're relaxed. There's a whole procedure that we'll break down when we discuss the auditing in detail about the entire way that this is done. But to keep it simple, they make sure you're comfortable and they bring you up to this high or this major stable win at the end of every session. And there's several questions that they ask you that act as post-hypnotic suggestions at the very end of these sessions. One of them is, and just like the newscaster, where you're comfortable on your couch, they speak in a cadenced speech pattern and they look right into your eyes. Those three elements right there are part of inducing this trance state. So the auditor has something similar. He's trained how to speak in this cadenced speech pattern. He has his TRs in, which means he looks right into your eyes. And while you're nice and comfortable and blown out of your mind, he asks, would you like others to have the wins and gains that you now have? Now, I answered yes to that 1,000,000 times, and if you don't answer yes to that, something went wrong with the session, and you have to go through a whole bunch of correction lists. So it eventually gets easy to just say yes, even if you don't fucking feel that way. So the real trick here is, though, that, again, you're implanting a post-hypnotic suggestion into someone, and the power of the subconscious is such that even when I hated proselytizing and trying to get other people into Scientology, I didn't like it, and thank God I didn't get too many people in, I still felt this urge to do so. We're going to be developing this theme a lot more, like I said, as we carry on, but I just wanted to throw this into this video because each of these videos has a certain kind of purpose in mind that I'm thinking with when I'm making them. And what I wanted to do this video around is, this could be something, maybe you have a fucking friend or something that just got into Scientology or is thinking about it because they like these introductory choruses, or maybe you yourself are interested. I just wanted to make this video as a piece that you could show somebody where, look, this is what they're not telling you that you're going to get involved in. And if you continue on with this 10 years down the road, if you want to leave, you're going to lose you're going to lose all the friends that you have in Scientology. You're not going to be able to sue them or do jack shit about the emotional torment and distress and all the other things they create. You can't sue them. You're not going to have any recourse, and you're going to have a very difficult time, like I said before, figuring out what the fuck happened to you. So hopefully this video and this series can be a warning to people from someone who's been there and done that, trust me, you don't want to even take that fucking personality test. It's a setup, and you're setting yourself up for an unbelievably horrible experience down the road if you carry on with Scientology. Now, I promised I was going to tell you a little story about my parents. This is what happens, my friends, if you go up this bridge to total freedom. Realize that you don't want to continue anymore and that you've been scammed on a very deep level, and wish to tell your parents, who are also involved, what they're actually up against. So I was about 1.5 years out of Scientology. I had figured out right away that L. Ron Hubbard was a liar, and therefore I questioned everything. But this took me about 10 years to actually fully understand the depth of what happened to me. So I didn't do the greatest presentation to my parents when I had the opportunity. This was hard to get a meeting with them because they knew I wanted to talk about Scientology. They knew I was out of it or coming out of it, because I was still kind of scared to tell them, how anti-Scientology I really was. I wanted to make an attempt to wake them up. Now, they agreed to meet with me at a place called the Red Robin. I live in Los Angeles. They live in Camarillo, and this was a halfway meeting point to discuss Scientology. So I had all my notes on hand. I did all my research. I knew exactly what I was going to tell them. Part of it was the bite model that helped me snap out of Scientology, which we talked about in Scientology Bites. And part of it was how L. Ron Hubbard was a liar. Look, here's all the things he lied about. Another part was, look at this motherfucker was involved in the occult, which we're going to have a lot more to say about as well. In other words, I had a whole case presentation that I worked really hard on that I fucking knew once I showed this to them, there's no way they're going to continue on with Scientology. So I met up with them for about an hour straight. They just very kindly listened to what I had to say, right? They didn't interrupt, and they looked like they were interested. And I broke down all this evidence to them. And what they did at the end of this is they looked me right in the eye with their TRs in, and they said, son, can you please understand what you're saying? Can you please listen to what you're saying? You're now living out of your car. You have destroyed or given up your acting career, and that's a fucking jet going overhead. Sorry for the noise. It's like so difficult to fucking record where there's all this fucking noise going on around. So my parents said, what you're saying, Doug, is that you're living in your car, you have destroyed your acting career, you've left the greatest thing that's ever happened to you in your life, per all the success stories that you wrote and all the success that Scientology gave you in your acting career. You threw all that away, and now you're saying that only you have figured out that there's some grand conspiracy going on with Scientology. We as Scientologists have all been lied to. These are successful people like your parents. These are people like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, who you look up to, Doug. Remember you wanted to be an actor and these people inspired you? All these successful businessmen, all these incredibly successful people in Scientology have been duped, and only you have figured out that we're all being lied to, we're all lying to each other, and L. Ron Hubbard was a liar, and he was a hypnotist, and he was involved in black magic, all this crazy shit that you're spewing, Doug. Can you please just take a moment and listen to what you're saying? That's impossible. You know, I'll never forget that moment, as well as many other moments, because like I said in the very first video, certain moments were so extraordinary that they sort of were recorded as a photographic memory. So I feel like right now I'm sitting there at Red Robin, baffled and astounded by what they just said, because that very clearly showed me in one shot the position that I was in trying to wake up my parents. What I was saying was crazy from the point of view of a Scientologist. I would never have believed any of this shit myself, hence the enormous shock when I jumped on the internet and started finding out that this shit was the case, right? So the way this ended is they very quietly, without saying anything more, got up, went to their car, and that's the last time that I saw them. That was the one and only chance that I had to prove that they were in a very dangerous situation. They had in fact been conned, and it was a conspiracy they were involved in. We've explained in previous videos how that works with the compartmentalization. Scientologists have no idea what the game is really about at the top, and we'll go into more detail as to how that all works. But I think you can appreciate from that example where my parents were coming from. I didn't have a response to that. I knew what the answer to that question was. And I knew how ludicrous from their point of view what I must have been saying to them sounded like. But I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to wake them up. So there you have it, my friends. Before we end off here, with everything that we've covered, I just want to ask you, would you want to continue on with Scientology?
If you continue with Scientology, we will be very happy with you. And you will be very happy with you.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a green